I'm going to let a few of y'all sign on. I will get started at 10 o'clock. Right at 10 o'clock, like I stated. I'll be on TikTok, YouTube, and I will be on Facebook Live. This is going to be a short period. I will be recording for TikTok as well. As soon as we hit 10 o'clock, so if you're with me, join in. You can type in hello, but I'm going to just start telling a story at 10 o'clock and post it. And I'm winging these stories, so bear with me. So it's fog advisory, I see. All right, 10 o'clock, I will get started to record. Almost there, 1 minute left. So, if y'all want to join me, I will get going, start talking at 10 o'clock. 1 minute away. See one person there. Getting ready to get started. Ready to hit the TikTok button. Hi, good evening, and welcome to Bedtime Stories with Sid. This is a new venture for me, so bear with me because here I go tonight recording my first bedtime story for you. So this is all about my journey and how I developed into my mediumship. And the first story I'm going to talk about is probably back from around 1964, 63, 64. Growing up, I was raised in a little village area called Bucktown. And in Bucktown is, like I said, it's a little fishing village. It's got a bunch of seafood restaurants, seafood businesses, had a shrimp factory back then, had an old abandoned movie theater, firehouse where that was ran by the community. So that was really cool back there in Bucktown. There was like the little fire was on May and Lane that went around, and everybody knew everybody. It was a very close-knit community. And as a child, I used to live at a very young age of about 3, 4, and 5. I lived on Orion Street, which was right outside of Bucktown. We had an apartment that was above a garage. And this apartment was, you walk up like stairs, like turn the corner, go up the stairs. And then it was when you first walk up onto the stairs, straight ahead was the bathroom, one of those old claw bathtubs and a sink and a mirror. And then if you made a right, you went into the kitchen. And then from the kitchen, the next room over was like a little den that we used to have a pull-out bed where my parents slept. And then if you walk up the stairs and went to the left, there was a room there that was a bedroom. And that's where me and my sister, we shared that room. And then behind the wall that went along the whole length of the place was like a big walk-in closet. And it really went from one end of the apartment to the other end. And this apartment was above a garage, and like our laundry and stuff was downstairs. For a while there, next to us was an empty lot, and then there was apartments behind us, like older type apartments at Old Metairie. And I remember as a child playing and things, there would be periods where I would go to that lot, and when I would cross it, sometimes there would be a house there that was not there all the time. And it was an old house, and I can still to this day remember the smells. Like it was like an older house, and you could always smell like coffee and cinnamon, and it had this smell of like hot tea. There was always this smell, and there was this older gentleman that lived in the house, and he would always invite me in. And I remember he would do raisin bread, like that had some cinnamon, and he would put butter on it, and there would always be either a tea or hot chocolate or there was always something hot. I remember that, and it would always be a fire inside the place, and and in New Orleans that's not common, and it was just amazing. I can distinctly remember that it was the smell that attracted me to this place. And he would just be there. We would have conversations, but without speaking. It was almost like telepathy. And as my stories continue, you're going to get to hear more and more about the telepathy and the communications as times develop, as we get further into the stories. And so I remember as a child going to see him, and that's the first remembrance I have of anything supernatural, or because it wasn't there all the time. It was only there at certain times. So like that house was not always there on that lot. That was really, really strange for me. But I remember going to it. And and that was kind of like my first experience of something that was different. And nobody would probably believe me about that, but I was too young to make sense of it. But it was it was really, really a cool adventure. And I would go over there, and we would sit and we would talk, but without moving our lips. It was weird. And this man followed me throughout my life, and different. You're going to hear about him more and more as we go along with the bedtime stories. But so I really wanted to focus on him tonight. That you got to hear about the strange man in the house that appeared sometimes, and sometimes kind of sounds like Hansel and Gretel, doesn't it? But I do remember that. And then growing up, I was also in that time frame in the 60s. That's the era that I'm covering right now. I was raised by a woman who had a lot of supernatural experiences. And you're going to hear some more cool stories about her. But growing up with her, I remember the show Merlin the Magnificent and all those kid shows that used to come on that she used to watch with me. And then we would always watch Dark Shadows together. And then there was another kind of horror one that came on. These were all like soap operas and stuff. And so that kind of set the tone when I was young. And she had a lot, and she would tell us ghost stories from where she lived. She came from northern Louisiana, and her name was Mama Mac, and she would share lots of stories with us as well. And so she even had one. She used to have a story about a man that had no head that would walk around her town, and she would tell us about that story. And all of this is going to come to make sense as I tell you more stories. But so I don't want you to forget these, because these are going to build into other stories as we go along. So she used to always talk about that man, and she always called him the little fellow. And she would always refer to this thing. And then she talked about a house that was haunted that she lived in up there. It was right on the Arkansas-Louisiana line. And I actually went up there to visit that house with her when I was about 7 years old. And so I wanted, just building that story. So I'd go and went and visited that little town, but it was right outside of Kilburn, Louisiana, which is a very small town. You literally can throw a rock from one end to the other. And it had like 2 stores and a post office in the town, and that was the whole town. And so she took me there, and she showed me where the haunted house was. And I was too young to know what sensing was back then, but I would have loved to have known that. And then, throughout the years, things grew. And what got me more into my psychic abilities was my aunt, my grandmother's sister, my Aunt Ethel, used to read playing cards. And that was my grandmother's sister. She worked for my grandmother's seafood business. And she would read playing cards. And she was very good. And she would only read the women in the family. She wouldn't teach me or read for me. So when I was old enough, I got my first deck of tarot cards at about age 12, 13, and I started doing readings my own. And so that's when I started to develop my psychic gifts. And from there, the story just begins to unravel. Growing up in that same time frame, I used to have a little redhead man that would show up, a little boy who would show up and play games on me, play tricks. I learned later he was my doorkeeper. And so I'll tell you more. You guys said this is all going to build as we go on. But I'm going to kind of stop in just a moment, because I want you to really listen to the story and remember the characters. Remember the old man in the house. Remember the little red-headed boy. Remember the man with no head that Mama Mac used to say, the little fella. She used to call him the little fellow, because there's a lot more cool stories and miracles that I got to experience with those characters. And those are going to be in upcoming stories. So tonight I'm getting ready to crawl into my bed and have a good night's sleep, and I want you to have a good night's sleep too. So I hope you enjoyed my little story. This is the first one. There'll be a lot more to come, and they will build more and more. So you will learn a lot about my journey into the spirit world. Thank you, and good night, and thank you for joining me for Bedtime Stories with Sid. There'll be another one tomorrow night, so stay tuned. Bye.